The Stranded J Podcast.
And welcome back to the Stranded J Podcast.
Season 2.
Season 2, finally. It's been a long time, but I thought, why not start off the new season with something familiar to the podcast? And that's Daredevil. And that's with a guest, Tricia Holly. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we are on Season 2 of Daredevil Born Again, which if you've listened to the other episodes we've had, we went through episode by episode live on TikTok and through the podcast discussing our feelings towards that season. So make sure you watch those episodes. But I thought, now that this second season is wrapped up, why don't we do kind of just an all-in-one discussion on our thoughts of Season 2 and kind of what's, what we've liked more, what we've liked less.
I have so many thoughts,
Get
Jay.
our thoughts, because we were not, throughout this entire season, we weren't able to watch it with everybody else. So it came out weekly on Tuesday nights, and we were not able to watch those on Tuesday nights, so we'd watch them on Wednesday nights. So avoiding spoilers was very difficult. But we would just kind of be able to get to it by then, and we talked about it with each other after every episode, but we haven't really been able to discuss the season as a whole. And we just watched the finale. Mm-hmm. So I thought, why not just jump right into it? I don't know. How do you want to do this? Do you want to, I think I had this issue the last time we talked about Daredevil. Do you want to get an overall opinion of it first, or do you want to kind of go into the deets first and then kind of end it with an overall opinion?
So I want to start it with an overall opinion, just because I have the Rotten Tomato score, tomato meter, whatever you want to call it, pulled up. I also have the IMDb overview, and I want to see. I'm actually kind of shocked at the numbers, so I want to see if what you felt about it matches these numbers.
Sure.
So let's do out of 10. How did you feel about season 2 out of 10?
I'd give it a 7.
I would give it a 7 as well. The tomato meter is 88%.
I thought about maybe a 7.5, but I think I'm going to take it down half a point to 7.
I will say,
round down.
Google users, it's at 76%. So that would have been perfectly 7.5. Okay. And I'm like, that seems fair.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
But then the Rotten Tomatoes had it at 88, which that's a pretty high score. And then IMDb has it at an 8.1 out of 10 stars. And so,
IMDb is always a little different with that stuff because it's a little more, it's not super, anybody can kind of give their review on there. There's not anything you have to go through. You can literally just have an account with IMDb.
Is that not the same for the tomato meter?
Well, sometimes it is, but there's the audience score and then there's the review score of actual certified critics, I guess, which you can still take with a grain of salt, but with IMDb, anybody can just kind of go on there and it's like Wikipedia. You can kind of just do whatever you want.
I gotcha.
But yeah, I would say, so you agree 7 out of 10?
I think that's fair. And before we keep going, I just want to preface, because I know that there are a ton of Marvel fanatics out there that the moment you say something negative against this series, that they just jump down your throat. So 7 out of 10 is not a bad score.
Yeah.
I liked, overall, I liked it.
From what I've seen from other people online now that I've been on it, it's kind of on par.
Good.
There are some people who like it a lot more. I was actually just on TikTok, and I was just on threads and stuff, and there are a lot of people kind of ranking the seasons, and we can give our rankings at the end, but there are a lot of people ranking this one maybe past season 2 of the Netflix show, but under season 1 and 3. There were some people who ranked it, just under season 3 as the number 2 out of all of them. Which I think is a little much, but that's one thing I've noticed about this show is it's definitely garnered an audience that is really passionate, which is good. But also I threaded this out today that I have to remember a vast majority of people who are watching this show are not comic book fans and have not read a comic book in their life, and that is totally okay. But I think that's where some of these kind of it's hard because the writers themselves said that they take arcs before they like fully write the script, their favorite arcs, and kind of go in a direction they want to go in with them, and they kind of mesh them all together. So you get bits of all these different writers who did a whole arc on Daredevil in the comics. And, you know, if you've read all of those, it's cool to see, but I think it gives you a little bit more of a critical eye just because you know kind of what they either watered down or either made better or had to kind of write themselves into a corner and then write themselves back out of it. And so that was kind of part of it for me that I think some people don't have the context of, which is, like I said, that's totally fine. I'm not trying to like be a gatekeeper with that.
You comic book guys always love to say, well, it's because you haven't read the source material. Do you know how many people fighting against exactly the opinions that you and I have agreed on throughout this season, which we're going to get into, used that exact same term in the comment sections of these videos as the episodes were coming out, which is, oh, it's just people don't know the character and that's why they don't like the series because I've read all the comic books. It's like, yeah, I understand, but as someone who has, I mean, I've read Daredevil comic books, but I certainly am no expert. I've really just read some of the latest stuff because I enjoyed the Netflix series and I wanted to see what the comics were like, which I think is a good thing too. But that being said, I had no problem being critical of it. So from a storytelling perspective and a writing perspective, I have my own opinions on that. And so, yeah, I think that you can still reach the same conclusion. There's more than one way to climb a mountain.
No, I agree. Let's jump into it a little more detail. Like, we're not going to break down like every episode. We'll do a quick kind of pass through of all of them, but like, let's just kind of go through and kind of start first. Let's start off with season 1, a little bit and where that ended up, which is, you know, everything was kind of going south. Karen returned and Matt decided, you know, he's building a team essentially to be against, you know, the anti-vigilante task force and to kind of, they go underground and, that's kind of where it's left off. And then we kind of pick up with this one kind of right in the middle of the action where we have, you know, Matt is infiltrating the Northern Star cargo ship, which is carrying weapons for the mayor because he's trying to get some in for the anti-vigilante task force, and he's kind of being a part of that trade. And he kind of, it gets capsized due to various reasons, but it's mainly he told the captains to do if it was infiltrated, and then they kind of turn it against Daredevil. Anyways, starting off though, we have Daredevil in a new suit, which I heard a little bit of what you thought of that. So he has technically the same suit as season 1, but he spray painted it black, and we finally get the double D's on the chest. What were your thoughts of that? I know that's kind of a cosmetic thing, not a story thing.
I like the red suit more.
Yeah. Well, and the black suit is cool, and I'm currently rereading the Charles Soule run, which the show takes a lot from. And it's a cool like change of pace. Like it's, you know, there's never really a major purpose for it. I know in the comics, it kind of represents he's a little more pure Daredevil as opposed to just Matt Murdock. And he's a little bit more violent. He doesn't kill still, but he's a little bit more heavy with the fists. In this one, they don't really explain it either. You're kind of under the impression he's just a little more stealthy, and he's a little bit more, and there is that representation that happens throughout the show of the pure Kingpin and the pure Daredevil that kind of appear because you don't get a lot of Matt Murdock lawyer for a good part of it.
They did a lot of color representation that was really shoved down your throat. Not that that's necessarily a criticism, but you really couldn't miss it as you watched through the series.
What did you think of the first episode of the season? If you remember, kind of, really the only thing we really get is kind of getting caught up with the characters. Karen's now a reoccurring character, which she wasn't in the last season, which they thought, you know, giving back context from that other season, we did get a writing change with the crew, and they kind of, that's, you know, notoriously talked about, so we won't go too far into it, but there was a change in creative minds halfway through season 1 of filming, and they kind of recharted course. So this season is full on the new writers that were kind of trying to Frankenstein the first season have now had the full creative control. And one of the things that they did was they crossed it fully into the Netflix show, which they weren't going to do, which in turn they bring in Karen Page. Foggy Nelson is still dead from the first season, but Karen Page is very much in this season. And I think we already know your thoughts on Karen Page.
I am a certified Karen Page hater. I have hated her since the original series. Not in the first season. I didn't mind her then. I didn't mind her through some of the second season, but by the third season, I was definitely like, she needs to go. And so typically every time I have a character in a show that I just can't stand, they stick around. And this was no exception. So when you ask how I reacted to season 2, episode 1, where all of a sudden she was back in his life after completely ghosting him essentially for a year while he grieved Foggy and just kind of left him high and dry. And then she comes back and then all of a sudden they're super lovey-dovey. In the first episode, you come in and it's been 6 months and they're hiding, underground, and she is getting all swole with the punching bag. And then he comes in and they start making out. I'm like, No, already off to the worst start I could imagine. I had such high hopes. I know you were also talking about the writers. I would say, spoilers just for the entirety of this season, the writing was very weak for me.
Yeah, I would say going into 2 points, I think they kind of bit off more than they could chew with ideas. I think they didn't want to abandon characters that were established with previous writers, and they wanted to kind of finish some arcs for them, and they also kind of wanted to find things for them to do, but they weren't originally part of their plan. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of how I felt. And I just kind of felt like there was a lot of, I don't know, like the dialogue was rough. I felt like the dialogue wasn't as sharp. A lot of, and not to sound like a prude or anything, but there were a lot of F-bombs that were Disney F-bombs.
That's a great way of putting it. It's look, I'm a Marine veteran. I have no problem with a cuss word. I like the F word is my thinking word. That being said, they cuss like they're 8 years old and they're just learning how to cuss, and every single person does it. And so it just kind of takes you out of it.
Well, what it does is if everybody is dropping F-bombs, then everybody kind of becomes the same kind of character, and it waters down everyone. And what makes them unique isn't really there anymore because they all talk the same. Mm-hmm. That is one criticism I have. And that's kind of what the whole season kind of had when it comes to the dialogue issues for me, is a lot of the just really kind of poor writing of people talking. And adding on to that, I feel like the show was just very bloated. I feel like it was...
With characters?
With characters and with story arcs. And I said this at the end of this last episode. I just feel like the show would have maybe been better and more tighter as a story if it were a movie as opposed to a series. Because as much as I love getting a lot of Daredevil, there was a lot of characters that you either didn't care about or they kind of had a struggle keeping them going in the story. I felt like, like for instance, the one that I don't like that's kind of my Karen right now is Heather, which I kind of like where they're taking her for the next season. But Heather, they brought her in season 1, and, she obviously almost got killed by Muse, and then she got saved. And so she has PTSD, and it just felt like they kept having to remind you she was there, but they weren't trying to progress her character much. And, obviously she has PTSD. Obviously she's questioning things. Obviously she's switched over sides to be more pro-Fisk and the anti-vigilante task force and all this stuff. But it just really felt like she didn't have a lot to do. And then you get a lot of Vanessa, who I love that actress and I love the character of Vanessa, but she felt it made a lot of sense that she died after some time, because like not only is that part of the comics, but it's also a motivation for Fisk. But also I just felt like they got really lost in the weeds with what they were going to do with her and what they wanted to do with her.
I remember, was it episode 3? You had said something about like Vanessa is just lying on the floor and no one knows what's going on. She's in her own series. Yeah, she's not even
it felt like a different show for me. And that was tough, like dealing with like, when you have such powerhouses like Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, and they they've always have been, you know, a part of the story, right? They've always been kind of like they've had the supporting cast to help them, and there's great supporting characters that keep the story going and keep those characters rich. So I'm not trying to say that we needed more screen time necessarily. It's just the time that we didn't have with those two that was supplemented with these other characters just weren't interesting enough for me. And I got really worried about halfway through the season when it felt like just we were going back and forth between like every character. I was like, I don't care about you. I don't care about you. I don't care what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. And it got really worrisome. And I said, hopefully they're going to start kind of cutting the fat, and whether they kill off characters or they write them out or they give them a break. And they started to do that a little bit more halfway through the season, which made me happier. And that's what made the season finale so strong, was they really focused in on Matt and Fisk and let them have their, you know, acting moments and let them have their arcs. But also when they did cut to other side characters, it was purposeful and it made sense. So that helped. The other thing I was going to mention when it comes to the writing is the one thing that for me personally holds this show back is the fact that all of these story arcs that they're telling in Daredevil Born Again have been told in the Netflix series just better. And I know people are getting tired of the comparisons and tired of the, well, you know, your nostalgia, you know, the nostalgia for the Netflix show. I'm sorry. I rewatched season 3 of the original series. I watched season 1 and 2 shortly after we finished the first season of Born Again. And it's just night and day. And whether it's the lighting, the dialogue, the acting, the pacing, anything, but also the moments that they told and the lessons that they taught within these characters, it was more subtle, it was more effective, it was more interesting. You know, for instance, you know, like Michael Gandolfini, his character, who by the end I got a little more into, and I did like kind of where his arc went.
Sorry, you're gonna have to remind me. Michael's character, who is that?
He was what's his actual character name? I can't even remember anymore. Let me see. I have it pulled up right here. As Daniel Blake. He's Daniel, his Fisk's protege and the deputy mayor.
Oh yes.
With BB.
The deputy mayor.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it did kind of wrap up in by the end of it, you know, with his arc, I kind of did feel bad for him, but that's just Agent Nadim from season 3. And Agent Nadim, it was just a better paced story arc of a character that appears and it shows the lessons of getting tied in with Fisk and how it can happen so quickly, and how Fisk is really good at manipulating people to a point where they can just kind of, you know, they don't even know they don't even realize just how serious it is that they're being an accomplice of all of this stuff and how corrupt everyone around them is. And then by the time they notice it's too late and they make kind of the sacrifice for the greater good after they realize it, knowing full well they're going to die. It's the same story. It's just, I felt like the Nadim version was much more, the Agent Nadim version was just a much more better written version of that. And that also ties into just the whole Fisk and Matt story in general, which I was telling Tricia today, like this is okay, so now we have 5 seasons of Daredevil, if you include the Netflix show. 4 of those seasons focused on Fisk. And now it feels like, you know, we told the whole, you know, we're the other side of the same coin story multiple times. They first, you know, did that in season 1 of Daredevil, and then they kind of went back to it in season 3 and kind of tied up those loose ends to kind of finish off their kind of arc as enemies. Mm-hmm. And then now we're doing Born Again, and it's just they're telling a more obvious version. That's where you talk about color and like the use of color and making it hitting it over your head with the Fisk in white and the devil in black or red, and then the clash, and then the red on the white and all this. That has
right, and then Vanessa dies, and now his lapels are black on a white suit.
And it's interesting and cool in a way, but also like we've crossed this bridge before, and we get it. Like Matt and Fisk are people who were raised very similarly, and they have a similar situation in their upbringing, but also very different by these small little things and just how little parts of your life can affect you differently. depending on who you're influenced by and who, you are inspired by. And we've just been told this so many times, and it feels like we've had full episodes of them just kind of going back and forth and acknowledging that. And that's where I start to get a little bored of Born Again, personally.
Yeah, well, and I think another thing that a lot of people, when they have that criticism of, you are just in love with the Netflix series for nostalgia, you can't have it both ways. This is something Disney does a lot. When they buy the rights to something or have the rights to something and then they want to make it theirs, they thrive off of that nostalgia. They're expecting the nostalgia. And to pretend like you can expect the nostalgia and get all of your income off of it and all of your viewers off of it, but then feel that you don't need to uphold a certain level of expectation is just not how the world works. So I think that it's forever going to be associated with the Netflix show, especially because not only are they officially merging them now where they're saying, yes, that's still in the universe. Yes, we have the same characters that are coming in. Because I know initially it was going to be a break, but now it's not.
Well, and I get it. Like, a lot of people have been making the comment, Disney was in charge of the Netflix show too. Disney owned the right. Like, they were the ones who, they just bought or sold it through Netflix. And I understand that, but it's not that black and white either. Just because Disney was behind that, they actually were very kind of one toe in, because they weren't even sure if they wanted to associate it with the MCU. It was very hinted that it was in season 1 and at least season 2, but they kind of wanted to distance from it. And then when they kind of, they wanted more control over it.
It reminds me of when we worked at Warner Brothers and you saw that difference and this was back in 2020 when DC was not as prolific as they are in their movies now, where if you had DC, the animated, yes, Warner Brothers owns DC. It's a part of it, but they didn't pay attention to it. It was kind of treated like the stepchild, where they're like, no one watches animated series. No one cares about our comic books. But once it starts making money, all of the execs start to, move their hands together and they're like, oh, okay, well, this can actually make us money. We want to have all of the say in this. And that's where you get into the weeds.
Well, and that's why they had to have so many campaigns to bring it back, because, if Kevin Feige and the MCU and Disney had their full control way, they would have recast everyone. They would have recast Charlie Cox. They would have recast Vincent D'Onofrio. And then they realized just how many people loved the Netflix show that they did decide to bring it back, but they only wanted to bring it back enough to do it their own way. So it's the same actors just in those two, and everyone else around them was going to be different. And not only that, you got different showrunners, you got different directors. You have, people who directed Loki and people who directed Punisher, the Punisher series. And like, while they did great, those aren't the same people that directed, a lot of the Netflix show. And Jeff Loeb was a showrunner on the Netflix stuff through Defenders and everything. And you had a lot of different people they're dipping their hands into that. And they always were interviewed by saying, we weren't 100% sure what Marvel wanted us to be. We always hinted at the Battle of New York from the Avengers, and we made that a part of the universe, but we did it in a way that was not only well written because it was grounded with Daredevil, who's street level, but also because they'd acknowledge it very differently. But also they were like, if for some reason Disney and Marvel doesn't want this to be a part of it, it can still stand on its own. And so you definitely know the difference between watching the Netflix show and watching the Disney Plus version. And you see it in the kind of the cutting of the corners with the CGI. Sometimes you see it in the cutting of the corners in the writing. You see it in the, we have a theme as opposed to a feeling of a show. So like you said, with the cussing, this show is I said this too, a few episodes in, the Netflix Daredevil was like grunge, and the Born Again a lot of times felt like what Gen Zers think grunge is. It's not even trying to really slight Gen Zers, but just like, it's not the era that they grew up in. And so they just look at kind of the highlights of it and they go, this is what it was. And so it's a fake version of what they want it to be. And Disney's done that a lot in the past. And so I don't know. And I will say this has gotten a lot better. This season, I thought the visuals were a little bit more consistent.
I was just going to say that there were a couple of scenes, as far as the cinematography goes, that I remember being in the middle of the episode going, that is a really good shot.
Yeah. And it was, if you remember in season 1, there was a lot of like, because of the different people in charge for a while and not, you could tell who shot what, and you could tell what was cheaper, what wasn't cheaper, what they tried to kind of, fix up in post as opposed to it happening on the day. And so, that happened a lot more last season. This season, visually, it's very consistent. And the only time it's not consistent is in a complimentary way is when we get to, what's the episode? Was it Gloves Off? No. Yes. That was the episode everybody praised so much. And that's what turned the tide for me with the show. Episode 4, where you have, after everything had happened and there's Vanessa, you weren't sure if she was dead or alive. There's the boxing match. And then the next episode you get, it's actually Grand Design, I think. Yeah, Grand Design. And that's where you get a big flashback essentially to the Netflix show, as much as not just the actors come back, but the way they shot it felt like a Netflix show. And people commented that way, where they're like, the lighting, when did this become Daredevil Netflix all of a sudden? Because the lighting is very neo-noir and very, stylized, and there's colors in the background as opposed to flat images and stuff. And so that happened, and you get Foggy Nelson back, you get Wesley back, and it felt and everybody loved it. Mm-hmm. And so it was, but when it wasn't that, it was still very good. I did like I did like how they shot the show. We've also talked about how, Born Again is definitely more leaning into the comic book side as opposed to a grounded take side. Mm-hmm. So you get a lot of like Daredevil swinging around. You get a lot of him throwing his billy clubs and they're bouncing off of things. And Fisk is more of a tank that like is superhuman than he is just a really, really strong guy.
I think you got in the diner Bullseye killing someone with a ketchup bottle, and I was like, that was very comic book, but not as a criticism.
Right. And like
they actually did a very good job with that.
And so if like I'm totally on board with all that stuff and with those changes. And I'll also compliment the show for, there were a lot of side characters that I really wasn't loving in the first season that I grew to like a little bit more in this season. I thought that like, as much as I didn't like Heather at the beginning, her arc eventually led to something that I'm okay with. I actually like Daniel Blake more this time around, because he had, he started to dive into the corruption of everything.
I'd agree with that.
I like Kirsten McDuffie a lot more in this season. She's, the lawyer that was with Matt at the beginning.
She is my favorite addition. Actually, both of the lawyers, the ex-cop that he had worked with in the first season, and I forget his name right now, and Kirsten's character. I liked both of them. Those are probably my two favorite additions. There are a lot of characters that I really didn't care if I saw ever again.
Right.
And this is so unfortunate because the whole White Tiger arc,
you're talking about Cherry, going back to the cop.
Cherry, yes,
Cherry.
That was his name. Thank you.
Yeah, and then he was a good one that they did of writing him out for a little bit. They gave him a heart attack and got him out of it because they just had too many characters going on, and that helped his character because by the time he came back, you missed him a little bit, and he had purpose and everything.
Yeah.
But going back to your thought,
yeah, and both of them were fantastic actors, so they could really hold themselves in a scene with Charlie Cox, which was nice. But that being said, the White Tiger arc is so unfortunate because obviously they did not know that the original actor that played White Tiger had this terminal illness, and they had to kind of have a creative way of writing him out, but also finishing that arc. And I think by the end of it, they got there, but there were just so many scenes that I'm like, I don't care. They just, a lot of them just went on a little too long, and they didn't establish anything new. I don't remember what episode it was in, but there was that particular moment where
Fisk is having a dinner with everybody, and everybody of power is there. And Buck is sitting there kind of explaining how this whole, like a very Game of Thrones, like this person does this and this person does this. And Vanessa is actually pulling the strings while Fisk is kind of the power. And it's like, I don't need a breakdown of who these people are because we've spent so much time with them from all these scenes. And then it kind of just ends and you're like, okay, well, what could we have put there instead of that to make the episode more interesting?
It was also very tell, not show.
Yeah.
Where it was
that,
just...
And that just never... And I hate to go back to it like crazy, but it's true. That's just not what happened with the Netflix show. And that's what in turn helped with the pacing, was you never had it just being talked about out loud too often. And when it was an important moment. And it just felt like a lot of these scenes just kind of aimlessly went off, and you could have trimmed all of that. And I'm wondering too, if watching season 1 and 2, like binge them, if it feels a little bit better, because when you watched it weekly, I just felt like we were just, okay, another week. I'm excited for Daredevil. Oh, the characters are stagnant. They're staying in this. They're just talking about the same things. They're acknowledging the same things. Some of them are so like not a part of this point in the story that they're just kind of there. And that got hard for a little bit there. And one thing I'll acknowledge is, like, after that episode we were just talking about where they did all the flashback stuff with Foggy and everybody, the following episode, you would agree with me, was the absolute worst episode of the season.
It was so bad. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure it was
it
the
6?
Grand Design.
Yes, it was Requiem.
Yeah, so the Grand Design was one of the best, and it's where Foggy came back, etc. Well, not came back, but he was in that flashback. And you're right, seeing Wesley again was amazing. And then Requiem just nosedived. And again, I still have that IMDb pulled up. That is one of the top rated episodes. So we are in the minority there.
I know. And you know what's crazy about it, looking at it here, when we first watched it, we're like, man, they had to have had an A team and a B team. Like it just felt like there was one team that just had a really good vision, and they just knew exactly what they wanted. And then this next episode had to follow that, and they just weren't good with dialogue. They weren't good with the cinematography. It's the same writers.
Then it must have been a director. You're kidding.
Yeah. Angela Barnes. And,
that is shocking to me.
Jesse Wigito. Now, the second Requiem, the one we didn't like, added a Devin Klieger, who I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and blame that specific person. Like they tanked it. But I don't know what happened there. I don't know if that's something in our eyes that was maybe a pacing thing, or a thing that they just had an extra episode that we didn't like. But that's where you get Jessica Jones finally appears, and she was out of character in my eyes in that episode. And I thought her acting was not as good, and I thought it brought everyone's acting down. I thought the dialogue was really first draft.
It was probably the worst in the entire season.
Yeah. And then, to kind of bring it back to positivity with this finale, that's where you get Jessica Ritter coming back as Jessica Jones, and she felt exactly like
she was so good,
and she was just what you remembered, and everybody was who they were supposed to be. And sometimes I don't want to sit there and just like make up what happened, but sometimes I just have to think that maybe they just had too much time and too many episodes, and that's where I go back to the movie idea, because it just felt like, we got to keep it felt like a little fillery for me.
Well, I will say bingeability, it certainly makes those filler episodes a little more palatable. What would not have gotten better was Heather's character arc. That just came out of nowhere for me. It's one thing to not see eye to eye after a traumatic event. It's very expected that like your relationships take a turn. So that was the other thing about this season, is since it flashed forward 6 months, when we left, Matt was still with Heather. They were clearly having problems, and it was going that direction that they were going to split up, but they were still together. And then all of a sudden they're not together, and he is with Karen Page, and they're very much into a relationship. Like, it's not super new. And it was just weird. And then to watch Heather go from, I'm a professional who went through something traumatic, and yes, I'm going to be a professional about this, to I now have no qualms. I'm beating up people that I'm interviewing and faking and falsifying reports. It reminded me a little bit of the Gotham series back in the day that Barbara, when she became evil at one point, and it was like, boom, a switch.
Yeah.
And it was just something like that. And so that was jarring for me, even watching it one episode a week.
Well, we kind of talked about this today too. I think one of the hardest things that I've noticed when it comes to like writing the fall from grace of a character is to make it feel natural. Because a good example in my eyes, and a lot of people will disagree with me on this too, I always felt like the fall of Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars series was way too sudden. I feel like the actor, or Hayden Christensen in episode 2, Attack of the Clones, was not, they tried really hard to show his dark side. They really tried to show that he was on his way, and you knew what was going to happen because you've watched the other Star Wars movies, but it just felt like they gave him like half of a movie to completely fall instantly. And people argue with that like crazy. Star Wars fans are insane, but like I do feel
more
like
than comic book fans.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last with Born Again season 1.
I think you're right.
We talked about Star Wars for a while because it's a very similar thing, and I just felt like for Anakin that fall wasn't earned as much as everybody loves that, and I like the idea of it is brilliant and great, but just the execution I felt like just never quite got there. And then they came out with the Clone Wars TV series. And it had multiple seasons, and then people really started to like the prequel movies because it filled in those gaps, and it really gave you all that time to have him slowly show multiple times that he has a dark side and that he could easily fall. I felt like that was kind of the case with Heather, where, we saw her as one way, and yet again, maybe rewatching it helps a little, but I don't think it would solve all of this. She just is one way, and then the Muse situation happens, and it changed her completely, which is fine. But then it was the letting things sway her so quickly to just automatically, I'm bad. And then it turned into a black and white thing where it was like, okay, now I'm a little gray here when it comes to my morality because I'm questioning everything due to my trauma. And then it just went from that to just completely, just absolutely,
I'm bad and I'm fine with it.
Very, very bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens a lot in storytelling from what I've seen. And I don't know, I've never written something like that, so I know that's probably difficult, but I agree. I just felt like the idea of what she's going to do in the next season and the idea of what she becomes, and that's her arc, is a very good one for me. I think it's interesting, but the execution always kind of misses there.
Also, I will say that I don't think it was the actor that portrayed it that way. I think it was the direction, because
it usually is, from what you can tell.
Yeah, I agree. And so, she was very level-headed, obviously, in that first season, to the point where it would kind of frustrate Matt, because she would just be dissecting him and every move he was making, and she was trying to approach it from a very rational point of view as a therapist would. Is she a therapist?
Yeah.
Is she psychologist, or is she a therapist?
I thought she was a psychologist.
I think she's a psychologist. I don't want to demote this fake doctor, so
she becomes the mental health commissioner.
Right. And that too, like, it was supposed to just be like, I'm becoming this, and because it's a great opportunity and they're giving me this opportunity, and then all of a sudden she's just okay with him like being around Fisk blatantly committing crimes, and she's like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I was going with that, but all that to say, it was definitely intentional for it to be that sharp. So when she was in that final, the second to last episode, talking with Karen Page, and interrogating her, questioning her, she was very like melodramatic, like, you blah 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 blah, and so I could tell it was a directing choice. I disagreed with it vehemently, just as in that same episode. Actually, this was episode 6, not 7. So it was that same Requiem episode that we were talking about that just was not good, where they had Karen Page like straddle Bullseye.
Yeah, it was very sexual
weird.
out of nowhere.
Really weird.
Not to say that's not like a characteristic of like the Daredevil series, but it was just out of nowhere in the context of what they were telling.
Yeah, and then she started choking fake Wesley, and I forget his name now, but Wesley's a replacement. I know Buck.
Yeah, Buck.
And Buck is also in the comic book, so I'm not saying he was just like he's not someone they just threw in, but but then their relationship and like all of a sudden they were together. It's just weird. It was all very weird and forced, and I didn't like it. But to end on a positive note for this little segment, Bullseye. Let's talk about Bullseye.
I was just about to bring up Bullseye.
I love Bullseye.
Yeah, and he's been I think he was kind of the season stealer for a lot of people. And it's funny, like I said, I rewatched season 3 of the Netflix show right around where we're on maybe episode 2 or 3 of Born Again season 2. And right around the time he started to become a bigger player in this season, I had just finished the episode on season 3 of like his origin. And it really kind of brought everything back into context with this version. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say one thing, which is I think that while Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio have saved the series by realizing what was going wrong with it originally and getting new writers and kind of stopping things to go back to the roots, I do still think that from the context that we're given in interviews and in situations like this, I do think the one thing Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio are wrong about is you have to have Fisk and you have to have Matt and Fisk fighting. That's like the thing that they were like, we need to make this more connected in this way. We need to, and I think that is going to become a problem. And a lot of people have posted this online where we have got to start moving forward with other villains and antagonists. And that's not to say that Vincent D'Onofrio can't be in the show. That's not to say he can't be a villain in the series. But what it is to say is that I think the focus needs to stop, like I said, rehashing the Matt and Fisk coin situation. And they need to start embracing some of these other characters they've established. And I think they're starting to do that. I mean, as you can tell, Heather's going to become the next Muse from what you see. And obviously Bullseye he was so well received, and he's been well received since season 3 of the original series that I think he'll be coming back. And Bullseye is just a big part of Daredevil's story, and they never have crossed it. It's funny, even in the Netflix series, they kind of fumbled with Elektra a little bit because they tried to change it up from the comics, but also they missed a lot of what makes that story great, which is Bullseye is one of the biggest parts of Elektra.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I
love Elektra.
And that's not to, I'll spoil it for you because I know it's not going to happen this way. But in the comic books, in Frank Miller's run, when he created Elektra, Bullseye kills Elektra. He's the one who kills her. And it's in a very gruesome, crazy way. And he's a huge part of that. And one of the best stories in Frank Miller in his run is the fact that, Bullseye at the end, Matt paralyzes him. And he goes to his hospital bed and he can't talk. And Matt plays Russian roulette with him and like talks about his philosophies and all this stuff. It's very interesting. And, they started, they did a little bit of the Guardian Devil stuff in season 3. And they started to do some of that, but Bullseye has they've made him a loose cannon that's kind of on his own side quest, which is funny and kind of cool. I loved everything he did in this season, and they incorporated him by having, Matt kind of play with his psyche to the point that, the idea of this Bullseye is like, he just follows whoever is giving him the attention and whoever is asking him for help or whatever it may be, whether it's good or bad. So that's where you can use him against Fisk, and that's where he comes in for the story. But most of the time in this season, he's kind of just on his own, doing his own thing. And I really want to see, if it's not Bullseye, a character kind of show up and really be the main baddie. It happens with Batman all the time. You always have a story that looks really interesting because it's like, ooh, it's going to be, Batman versus Scarecrow, and Scarecrow's pulling all the strings. They don't use Scarecrow that often. This is interesting. I'm talking about Arkham Knight, but
yeah, you are.
But they don't use him as often. So this is cool that he's going to take the forefront. The Joker died in the last game. Let's have, somebody new kind of be the antagonist. And it all is kind of just leading to another person was in charge above him. And that happens with the Joker too, where the Joker is like, it's actually the Joker who was the big bad guy the whole time, or it was whoever. And they're kind of doing that with Daredevil now, where it's like, okay, we'll bring in Bullseye, but he's not the main bad guy. We'll bring in Muse, but he's not the main bad guy. We'll bring in whoever. And I just hope that they can kind of jump into something a little more fresh in the next season with that. But yes, going back to Bullseye, he's a big scene stealer. Great actor. He's portraying the character very well. His action scenes are great. There's just not enough of him.
Can I tell you, if Karen Page would have killed him, I would have
You just stop watching the show.
thrown my television out the window. And you know what? And I'm pregnant too, so I might have actually done it. That pregnancy rage is a real thing. But I have to ask you, because I didn't think we were going to be able to go this long. I'm like, we're just going to do a recap of the entire thing. Like, okay, that'll take like 20 minutes. I want to know what your thoughts are and what you would hope that the next season is, because they've already been renewed. They've already been shooting for season 3 of the Born Again series. So what are you expecting, and what are your hopes?
Well, the long answer is, I think that they're off to a good start for various reasons. One, I thought it was very ballsy of them to bring back the Defenders, the same actors for the Defenders.
Yeah.
Whether it's Jessica Jones or Luke Cage or even Iron Fist.
Oh, actually, speaking of, put a pause on that really fast.
Yeah.
Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, that's a thing?
Well, yeah, they were, and I.
Well, I
we have
remember
to
them being
context,
a thing.
though, we never watched the last. I think there's 3 seasons of Jessica Jones, and we got through half of season 2, I think.
Oh.
So we don't know where they ended up. But yes.
in the comics, he's with the nurse, the night nurse.
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure.
Is he? I don't remember at this point. I mean, these characters sleep around so much. It's
That's
hard
fair.
to follow. but it's like is in the recent run with Fisk, he's with Typhoid Mary. He's married to Typhoid Mary.
I thought Heather was going to become Typhoid Mary, and I was terrified Karen Page was going to become the stand-in Elektra, because they had killed Elektra in the Netflix series.
So going back to
Terrified.
my predictions, I don't know. I have no idea where this is going to go specifically. But what we do know is, Matt at the end of this season got arrested because he outed himself as Daredevil. Fisk has been, basically he struck a deal with the Attorney General, and he's living on an island, and he is no longer a citizen of the United States, and he can no longer be in New York or anywhere. Which is kind of his own prison, I guess, is the whole message. But that happens a little in the comics. But we're definitely doing Devil in Cell Block D. Is that what it's called? Devil in Cell Block?
Oh, I hope you're not asking me.
The Ed Brubaker run. So essentially, they, like I said, they've been meshing a lot of these arcs together. So we've gotten a lot of Mark Waid's run, we've gotten a lot of Charles Soule's run, we've gotten a lot of Brian Michael Bendis' run, we've gotten a lot of Frank Miller, and they haven't been telling it all the way straight through, so things have gone back and forth. But at the end of Brian Michael Bendis' run, Daredevil is outed as Matt Murdock, and then he gets arrested. And he goes to prison, and, the smile happens, and he's excited because he's in general population with these guys, and most of these guys he put in there. And he's excited to be able to just he doesn't have to have an excuse to fight. He doesn't have to have an excuse to be unhinged. And I think that's going to really freshen up the show. The Mayor Fisk arc has come and gone, and I'm actually very, very happy the Mayor Fisk arc is over. That got really stale really fast. Great messaging, whatever you want to do with that, but it went too long. So I don't know. I predicted this with season 1, and I'm going to predict it with season 3. Foggy is not dead. I think Foggy will come back in that specific story. He's sitting there trying to help Matt in prison, and he ends up getting shanked and dies. And then you find out partially, and not spoilers for people, but you find out partially through the Brubaker arc that he is alive, and he was in witness protection, and he's kind of been building cases and things. And I think that they obviously can't do it that way because they are. Foggy's already dead, but I think he will come back in this next season, and I think he will be one of the reasons Matt is able to either get out of prison or they have the upper hand in this situation. So I do think Foggy's going to come back. The Defenders, we've already seen some set footage. They're coming back. I think they're going to be kind of more the action side of it outside of the prison. Karen is going to come back and be trying to get Matt out. And I just think that we are at a better, Heather's going to become Lady Muse. I think we're going to be in a better place starting this next season. It's going to be a fresh kind of arc. It's going to have, it's going to continue a lot of these characters, but it's also going to spice it up a little bit with just where they're going with it. And I like that direction. I actually really love, Daredevil's been outed as Daredevil. Matt has been outed as Daredevil multiple times in the comic books, and he always finds a way to either go backwards or go forwards or, not, have his identity revealed anymore, however it may be. But he's also been in prison multiple times, and whether he's been in prison straight up as Daredevil or if he's in prison as Matt. And that's going to make things really fun. Now, we also know that Fisk is coming back in some capacity, and that's where I just really hope that they let him be kind of a side antagonist, kind of pulling the strings from behind the scenes as kind of this unleashed full-on Kingpin, and these other villains kind of show up, and they're the big muscle of the season. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I actually, the finale and where they left everything and how the finale was told, it saved the season for me.
I agree.
If not for the finale, I would have probably given this season like a 6. I probably would have gone down like a whole point, if not more, just because I thought it kind of reestablished things in a better way. It kind of created more context for some things. It wrapped things up well, all that.
So I do have to correct myself. I Googled it. It said in Marvel Comics, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones are in a long-term married relationship. Yeah. With a child. So that is all straight from the comic books. And it says, even though they have dated other people, they are considered one of the most stable and enduring romantic relationships in the Marvel universe. Because
I haven't read a lot of their stuff. I just, whatever they've been tied into with Matt and some crossover things and, like Devil's Reign and things like that. But I do know Claire Temple's pretty different in the comics compared to how she is in the series. And that's another character I hope they bring back. Because, they brought back Mahoney this season. He was a great addition. I mean, he didn't have a ton to do, but it was great to have, that branch from the Netflix show that was really great. And I think bringing Foggy back would really add the heart that you need for the show again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I thought it was, yet again, I thought it was really ballsy that they're bringing back those actors, because those Defenders shows went from, some of them were amazing to some of them were bad to some of them were kind of in the middle, and they could have easily recast them, and it's cool that they're coming back to try to like either redeem or, continue their stuff. What are your thoughts on next season?
I think it doesn't, I'm always wrong. So I don't really want to say what I think is going to happen. I would like to go into what I hope would happen. Karen Page needs to die. She needs to go. Someone had said that she could potentially go off with Frank Castle and just be not in the series, at least for a little while, not a main character. Really hated that she became essentially the sidekick to Daredevil in this season. He doesn't need a sidekick. And
it actually caused a lot of like holding him back in these
absolutely episodes. It did.
They neutered, because I said this from the beginning when this first started too. She's like, you can't do that, you'll die, or you need to go do this and kill this person. Like, she went back and forth, and he's like, I can't. And it just, Matt would never do that. Mm-hmm. That's why their relationship didn't work originally in the first place.
That too, they've already done in this, well, not this series, technically it's a new series, but since they're saying that the like they didn't retcon the Netflix series, they've already been in a relationship and it didn't work.
And sure, like it helped a little after she found out he was Daredevil, but still, the thing about Matt is that makes him such a hard partner is if you're worried about him doing something, no amount of pleading is going to change him. No amount of pleading is going to make him stop. If you know where the bad guy is and he's causing all this chaos, no amount of telling Matt it's not safe is going to prevent him from, he'll go, oh yeah, you're right, I guess. And then he'll jump out a window when you go to sleep and he'll go do it.
Which is why he works so well with Elektra.
Yes, and that's why she was introduced, and that's why Karen Page became a little more stale after a while, and they eventually killed her off in the books. Because
maybe they should follow suit.
Tricia really doesn't like Karen Page if you haven't listened to this podcast before. That's the main arc of this.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, wrapping it up, I did enjoy the season. I liked it more than season one, a lot more. And I thought, I thought it was a little too up and down when it came to episodes. I think on a rewatch, maybe altogether, maybe it'll round out those edges a little bit more.
I think that's the main question is, you are such a rewatcher. Do you think this series worth a rewatch?
I think it is. I think literally season 1 and 2 together, like binged. I think it was a mistake for them to do this as a weekly show.
You think they should have dropped a season?
I think they should have dropped a season like they did in the Netflix stuff, because it just, some of the pacing, it would have helped some of the pacing for a lot of people and for me. But I'm definitely like, I would definitely consider rewatching those two like all together, because then you pick up on some context that you missed. We've had like a year in between, and some of that stuff might be a little bit easier to understand, and like maybe the arcs feel a little more full than they do when you're like, it's been a year, but I remember these characters were doing this, and now they're sitting here doing this forever, and maybe that helps, and the pacing's a little stronger.
You had mentioned Typhoid Mary, and I know that we were just talking about how they had introduced a heck of a lot of characters. I would love to see Typhoid Mary.
Well, and yet again, we were talking about Jessica Jones. Apparently, she is a part of Jessica Jones in season 2 or 3, whichever one. She isn't full on Typhoid Mary yet, kind of like how Bullseye was in season 3.
But it was hinted.
It's Typhoid Mary, and she's such a great character. And if they're bringing back actresses, go ahead and bring her back and give her a shot at it. Because I mean, I don't know who she is, but I'm sure it would be. I'd give her a shot if it means they can bring back Typhoid Mary and give her like a full arc. And I do think that they should bring back Elektra too. And I
absolutely think they should bring back Elektra.
I think Typhoid Mary or Elektra would be the perfect, very common Daredevil trope of another woman comes in his life and he kind of kicks off the other one. And I mean, the one thing I do know is Matt and Karen are sitting there telling each other how much they love each other this many times. That never goes well in Daredevil. It's just, I love you, I love you, I love you. Okay, yeah, your love is not going to last the entire series of Daredevil. I'm sorry. Like, something's going to bring it apart, whether it's death or another partner
that would
or
be
something.
Terrible for her.
So yeah, that's, kind of what I hope, because it just adds more spice to the Daredevil series. But, there was a point this season where I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can continue this. It's going to really disappoint me. Like, that doesn't seem like it's getting any better or going anywhere. And they were able to stick the landing enough for me to go, I'm excited for season 3. I'm excited to see this. It's going to feel more fresh and
yeah, I'd watch it.
It's a cliffhanger, but it's a cliffhanger for a whole other chapter that is not like, oh, well, we're going to continue the, Mayor Fisk arc. So that's exciting for me.
And the two sides of the same coin, and we'll tell that story again.
Yeah, exactly.
I think so. That is scheduled to come out in 2027. It doesn't have an official release date yet, I don't believe.
They're still shooting it right now.
So in the meantime, I think our homework, if we want to binge something, would be to binge the rest of Jessica Jones.
Before we go, I want to give a couple recommendations just for everybody, for you and for everybody listening. If you are as caught up as we are on Daredevil and Daredevil Born Again, if you want to watch something, I would catch up on or rewatch season 3 of the Netflix show, because I think a lot of people loved it and then didn't go back to it. Go back to it, because that one's great. We go back to Jessica Jones. If you want to go back to Defenders and Iron Fist and Luke Cage, those are probably smart ones to watch. Comic book recommendations, I would say the Bendis run, especially the last few arcs of Bendis's run, and the Brubaker arc especially, and the Chip Zdarsky run. I think all of those are
so good.
And I think those are great starting points. Now the Innocenti run, I have never read. I have single issues of it, but I need to get the arc, but it's not in print currently. I don't think, but that one had a lot of callbacks in this season, and I'm sure there'll be more. That's a lot of Typhoid Mary. So, that's another one. If you can find it, I'd look into that as well. And then the Charles Soule run as well. That's basically the one that that one just got reprinted and it just came out. So you can read that one. And that one has, Muse and the Mayor Fisk arc and stuff if you want to go back to some of that. So those are my recommendations until season 3 of Born Again comes out. And yeah, I think that's all I have for that.
I think so too. We did it, Jay. We filled an hour.
We did, and we didn't do it weekly. Yeah, we are almost exactly an hour. So Thank you everybody for watching. We're gonna have more episodes coming out here soon, and I hope you guys enjoyed Daredevil Born Again season 2. Giving me your thoughts. What did you think of it? Were we completely idiots, or were we wrong, or did you agree a little bit? That's up to you. So thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.